All right, now we're getting into a discussion about how should the justice system deal with cases of gender-based violence. Joining us for the conversation, you can send us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584, or you can give us a call on 010-594-6010. We really look forward to your views. Now, I'm joined by the Deputy Minister of Women and Children, Steve Letsike, the Head Promotion of the Rights of Vulnerable Groups at the Justice Department, Advocate Praise Kambula, who's joining us on the line. And then we also have a member of the Portfolio Committee on Police, Lisa-Maré Schickerling, and an activist, Onica Makwakwa. Very good evening to all of you. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us for this very important discussion, as we are seeing the country is certainly at pains, especially when it comes to the deaths of young women that we are seeing on our social media. Perhaps we begin with you, Deputy Minister, because a lot of organizations are calling out for the government not necessarily putting women first. We are seeing the rates of GBV as well as the murder and the GBH and rape rates coming up quite alarmingly. In your assessment, Deputy Minister, have South African authorities sufficiently, proactively and effectively taken a stance in protecting women in South Africa?
Thank you so much. Good evening to you and to the viewers of Newzroom. We have historic work that has been done in South Africa, from law enforcement agencies to laws, and that has been, enacted, but also that has been promulgated into, laws that must respond to, protection of all persons, including women, children, and vulnerable groups. We've seen it even in programs. 65 Tutuzela care centers were set up to respond to issues of gender-based violence, where it's one-stop centers that allows legal, health service, psychosocial, all of these things is investment that goes to respond to victims and survivors of gender-based violence. But in terms of protection and prevention, which is quite key, it's really things that must happen, and it starts at homes. It starts at accountability level when these incidents happen. And I think when you look at the statistics about many of the GBV incidents that takes place in our country, is intimate partner violence. The first point of departure of protection, or prevention for that matter, is that the perpetrators must stop. This rape must stop, murder, and then we can speak about how we then support and look at all other implemented interventions for that matter. But we also must deal with some of the substance and some of the issues around substance use and abuse, around, holding people accountable and making sure that when cases are reported, they ultimately reaches the level of conviction.
Lisa, the minister speaks about protection and the prevention. From a portfolio committee perspective, what role do you believe that the police service is currently playing in preventing and responding to GBV?
Thank you so much, and thank you to all the viewers out there this evening too. Look, we know that GBV is really a national crisis in our country, and it's something that must be treated as such. I mean, one woman gets killed every 3 to 4 hours in South Africa, and we're literally bleeding women in this country. The committee has been very outspoken about this issue, gender-based violence and the killing of children, which is actually increased tremendously. And something that's very sad that came out of the statistics of the fourth quarter statistics that came out last week is that a woman is more likely to be raped or assaulted in her own home, that of her assailant or somebody known to her. And it means that we're not even safe in our own homes. We also must be realistic. It's not necessarily just SAPS that must stem this tide. It's a crisis that's much deeper and it's more systemic. SAPS is only a part of a much broader societal and institutional failure. While the police capacity and responsiveness are definitely critical, the underlying drivers of GBV, like patriarchy, socio-economic equality, cultural normalization of violence, and really a broken justice system, are really beyond the scope of the police at this stage.
Onica, maybe just to bring you in there, I mean, Lisa speaking about that, it's not just SAPS that is responsible, it's a societal approach that we need to take. And this raised a conversation on social media, especially when it came to Mongale's murder. And it was about the precautions that South African women need to take in order not to land themselves in those positions. What's your take on that thinking?
That's first of all, just thank you for having me here, and good evening to the viewers at home. That's very disappointing that once again we are having a conversation that is centered around what women must do. You know, it's almost like telling women don't get raped, and we're not telling perpetrators don't rape. Don't get killed, instead of telling perpetrators, don't kill women. There's nothing women can do, honestly, at this point. When you look at this particular case, she took so many precautionary measures, including sharing her trip. All the things we've been telling women to do, they're doing. We are just not talking to the perpetrators in the same way. But it's also time for us to actually stop talking and begin acting in a way that makes getting away with these kinds of crimes to be able to assist us with prevention. The biggest issue in this country is that you can do this and get away with it. So we have not disincentivized men from this vile behavior, because they can go on with their own lives even when they've been arrested before. You know, so we need to stop talking. I've got some ideas of a couple of things that we need to do immediately to actually begin to demonstrate that we are serious about ending the scourge.
Onica, and I'm hoping that we will get to those points in terms of what the solutions are. I want to bring Advocate Praise Kambula into the conversation. Advocate, thank you so much for your time. I think what's also very important is, with all the stakeholders and the role players in the ecosystem when it comes to crime, one very important aspect is that of justice. And particularly in Olorato's case, we see that the two suspects, being Bongani Mtimkhulu and Philangenkosi Makhanya, according to News 24, were arrested in Brakpan on the 20th of April this year, and they were granted bail 6 days later. And here we are sitting having this discussion about Olorato and that funeral that's going to take place this coming Sunday. How effective do you believe are the current legal frameworks and judicial responses in holding perpetrators accountable for GBV?
Thank you for the invitation, and good evening to your viewers, and our condolences to the family of the deceased. You know, we have just recently, the Parliament has just recently amended the chapter of the Criminal Procedure Act, that is Chapter 9, that deals with the bail provision, and to tighten them. But one needs to understand that it is not the Department of Justice that grants bail. It is the judiciary's responsibility, using their discretion. And the measures that have been taken right now is to, particularly in cases of domestic violence where the accused person is in a domestic relationship with the complainant, the measures are, we have stopped the police bail, because bail can be granted in 3 ways. 1, it is police bail. 2, it is prosecutorial bail. And 3, it is court bail. So police, in terms of the Criminal Procedure Act, are permitted to release the person on bail, that is, who is in the police cell, and so are the prosecutors as well. But they do that when it is outside the court hours and the court days. So, but now, with these changes that have been done, now police are not allowed to do so in cases of gender-based violence and femicide, and so are the prosecutors. And even when a case goes to court, a magistrate now or a judge is called by the law to take stringent measures to ensure the safety of the victim, determine the safety, the threats of the violence, whether they are possible, and also the issues of resentment on the part of the accused person. All those things are expected to be done. And even the court now, with these changes that have been done, is not allowed to grant bail where the accused person is, as I said, that is in a domestic relationship with the complainant. That if the interest of justice permits the judge or the magistrate to grant bail, is required to issue a protection order first before releasing that person. So there are a number of issues that one needs to check when you deal with these issues. And it's such a pity in this situation that we have a person or people who were released on bail. And the issue, for as long as we have Section 35 of the Constitution that gives the accused person a constitutional right to be released on bail. Of course, it can be limited, but there are circumstances that need to be considered, which then they are considered from the evidence that is adduced before court to make then the magistrate or the presiding officer to make a decision whether it will be in the interest of justice to release this person on bail. But in this situation, I believe that it was one of those that one would feel that you have erred when you have done so.
And I mean, you speak, advocate, of the Justice Department not being the ones responsible to grant bail. But of course, the judiciary does depend on the strength of those cases that are brought to them by the NPA.
Yes, when you deal with the issues of bail, it is the NPA that is responsible. For instance, with these measures that have been introduced right now, there is no bail proceedings that must happen without the voice of the victim. The victim needs to be alerted and be informed and participate in those proceedings. And secondly, the presiding officers. So when I'm saying that we, as the Department of Justice, you don't see us in those proceedings,
right? Because
we draft law and we monitor the implementation of the law. We don't prosecute. We don't adjudicate over cases.
All right, let's hold the conversation there. For now, we are asking the question, how should the justice system deal with cases of gender-based violence? You can send us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584 or give us a call on 010-594-6010. We really want to hear what your thoughts are on this discussion. Let's go for a quick break. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. We continue with our conversation. And the question we are asking is, how should the justice system deal with cases of gender-based violence? I'm joined in this conversation by the Deputy Minister in the Department of Women, Children, Steve Letsike, the Head of Promotion of Rights of Vulnerable Groups at the Justice Department, Advocate Praise Kambula, a member of the Portfolio Committee on Police, Lisa-Maré Schickerling, and activist Onica Makwakwa. You can join the conversation by sending us a WhatsApp on 072-110-5584, or you can give us a call on 010-594-6010. So I want us to maybe just focus this part of the conversation on some of the challenges and the failures that we are seeing and how we can find solutions to them. And dear, maybe let's bring you in there. With regards to the barriers that could be preventing authorities to protect women in a way that we're expecting to, do you think that these issues are primarily resource-based, structural, cultural, or maybe a combination of all?
Well, I can tell you that, gender-based violence is a very complex issue because it's about where it happens and when it happens, what are some of the social, issues that exist that we constantly have to deal with. I think we have also lost the moral fabric of dignity, how we actually look at people, how we actually look at children. I mean, how do we allow ourselves to become a society that rapes a 5-month-old? That's unacceptable behavior. These things speaks about our own behavior in terms of that. Now, in the case where incidents happen, this is where we then respond. But when we look at prevention efforts, it's really about how we change behavior, how we change the minds and heart, how we deal with, toxic masculinity into positive masculinity, how we deal with comprehensive sexuality education, but also how we create safe spaces, bullying in school, attacks in taxi ranks, and all of these things. But the bottom line is what Onica has said. If we don't deal with perpetrators and hold them accountable, and that is the case, and when you look at the investment in the criminal justice system, what went into police procuring the right kind of evidence collection kits, what goes into national prosecuting authority in terms of DNA information that comes from police and so forth, but also how these things are analyzed and DNA unblocking into our own system. So all of these things, case management systems and so forth, are critical in dealing with the entire justice system on its own.
Speaking of case management systems, Lisa, do you think that police officers are adequately trained to handle GBV cases sensitively and effectively? What steps do you think needs to be taken to improve on these responses?
Well, the police definitely has to invest a lot more into their police officers. There is a lack of training across the country, and we've picked it up. It's quite evident. We have addressed the issues before. There's also, a massive lack of accountability just across the board. People, they don't always take these things seriously. Women do come and they open a case against a perpetrator, and perhaps they fight back. I've recently had a case like that where a lady fought back and she stabbed her perpetrator, and she's actually the one that's sitting in prison today, and he isn't. And she tried to open a case against him, but they use it against each other, and then it's like, you withdraw the case against me, I withdraw the case against you. And while we allow those things to happen, we're not actually getting to the root cause, because these cases then just get closed without investigation. And I think a lot of times police officers, due to these cases just being closed without any further investigation, they don't go back and actually check. So, they don't do proper risk assessments. We do know that the bail conditions, as has been discussed here, are really very weak. And there's definitely a lack of proper offender monitoring. We need to go back and check if these people are reoffending. We have to make sure that their DNA is logged into a system. And the DNA system in our country is very far behind. We know that there's a DNA backlog, and this needs to be addressed as soon as possible, because survivors really wait for months or years for justice. And in the case of people that are murdered, unfortunately, their families don't ever get the proper justice that they deserve. And that is very, very sad for me. And we must make sure that our cases are prepared properly and that we don't lose evidence in these cases, so that the perpetrators can get sent to prison.
And Onica, what's the impact of what Lisa is saying? I mean, if survivors are feeling as if justice is not moving fast enough for them, do we find that more and more of them are not coming forward with some of the cases that they experience?
Absolutely. As we are talking about this, there's so many more cases that are not being reported, because those victims are watching, first of all, how we are dealing with existing cases and are discouraged by it. But also, I often say this, that your children are listening to how you are talking about the victim. You are talking about the victim. Why did she go out with a stranger? Why did she go into a stranger's car? They're listening to your conversations about how you talk about the victim, and what they're learning from that is that you are not a safe space for them to come to you when this happens to them. So part of what also needs to happen is for us to really change how we don't believe women. We need to really change that, where we begin to believe women. And, when they tell us they've been abused, they've been violated, we need to start by believing them and support them from that point of view.
Right. Perhaps, Advocate, just to bring you in, we're speaking about just some of the backlogs and the cases that we see in the judicial process. How does this then impact justice for GBV victims?
The judiciary is responsible for the case flow management system. But as a department, what we have started to do with effect from the 1st of March this year, we partnered with an organization that is called AISH, and we introduced the 100 Days Challenge, which is intended to remove the waste from the court processes and to reduce the turnaround time in the management of those cases. And we have introduced it in domestic violence, in divorce matters, in maintenance matters, in sexual offences matters. So it is going on during this month. I think it's going to end around August. So that after August, we're going to start again because we need to reduce the backlog in these matters. And the issue of the backlog, there are so many contributors to it. It's so many issues that lead to backlog matters. It's not only the court system. There are also those stakeholders who are feeding into the court that would also cause a lot of delay in the management of the cases.
DM,
and we have also, with this 100 days intervention, we are working with them. We are working with police.
Right.
We are working with the Department of Health, the DSD, and the rest of all of those that are feeding into the court system.
DM Advocate is mentioning a number of departments and just the interlinks amongst all of them. Do you feel that we still need to smoothen out some of these synergies in order for there to be more effective outcomes, especially for GBV victims?
No doubt. And this is one of the reasons when you look at the National Strategic Plan itself on GBVF and what the President has called for, establishment of the Gender-Based Violence Council. One is to deal with the multi-sectoral response for us to stop treating things in silos, where government, one government department is doing this and the other one is doing that, where local government is not finding synergies, or where we are not even working together with civil society. Government is doing so much. There's a lot of investment that goes there. Civil society is doing so much to also bridge the gap. Private sector is also coming on board. So indeed, we need to deal with issues that pursue strings, but setting the agenda for a multi-sectoral response, but also to eliminate this top-down, but a dual approach to respond effectively, but also to make sure that we prevent gender-based violence.
Lisa, do you believe that the involvement of civil society could assist the police, especially from a resource perspective?
Oh, yes, definitely. I mean, civil society is definitely filling a gap where the state is failing currently. And there's a lot of good groups like Action Society, Missing Children South Africa, Women for Change. They're doing phenomenal work, and we must thank them for the work that they're doing. I mean, a lot of these issues are highlighted by them, and they assist families, they raise awareness, they push for policy reform, and we definitely have to take hands with them. This needs a whole of society approach. This approach is not a single approach. It's a multifaceted approach, and we have to collaborate with civil society as well as the other departments to ensure that we can create a better future for the women and the children of our country.
Most certainly. Let's bring our viewers into this conversation. We have Murimedi in Pretoria. Murimedi, a very good evening to you. What are your thoughts on tonight's topic?
Even hope you are well there.
We are well, thank you. Give us your thoughts, Murimedi.
Yes, my thought is this one. I was looking at this thing of gender-based violence. I tried to look at it. Then I see it's like it's another gender against another one. And then when I look at it, it's men actually who feels like they got more power to another gender, which is women. and then they start to either abuse it in many ways. So what I want to say here is women must try to, I can say maybe wake up or try to get into your senses wherever you are, and either you are going to socialize or whatever. Make sure that you are not alone. You must not be alone. Report to friends, report to your mother, and do everything. Try to make sure that your blind spot is secured, that everybody knows where you are. I also want to say, I saw something in the media, social media, where there's a woman who was being followed. And that woman, she tracked that person who's following her. And then she ended up approaching that guy, saying to the guy, why are you following me? I haven't seen you. I went up, I went down, you were following me. So something like that, you must know where you are. Either you are in a place that is dangerous. Try to be more vigilant. Because even if we can strengthen our law, it will never help as long as people they don't secure themselves, they don't use all these advices that it is given to them. So this is what I just want to emphasize to women. Please let them try to make sure that they are where they are really safe, and then they are protected, or they can report at any time. They can report to this person, this is what is happening, and so on and so on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Moremedi. I think I'm going to give all of our panelists an opportunity to respond to this, because just seeing all of your expressions, the sighing and the disappointment in many of your faces when Moremedi says that women need to wake up to their senses, they must secure their blind spots, and they must ensure that they are in a safe space in order for them not to get killed or raped. I'm going to start with you, Onica, of course, coming from the perspective of an activist. We did touch on this earlier, but just to continuously hear this type of thinking, what went through your mind?
That's precisely what's problematic. I think he lost me at women must. I would like to challenge him to speak to men and to challenge fellow men to not harass women, to not fear equality with women, and to not exert their patriarchal power and authority over women. I think there's not enough of those kinds of messages directed towards men. We keep telling women all these things, and they're doing and following all of these things, but they're still getting murdered even when they have protection orders, even when they've told us where they're going, even when they only go where it's lit and not dark. Women have the same right to equality, to freedom of movement, and the right to safety and dignity. And all these things that we are telling them basically also strip away some of those rights, because they mean that we are saying that must be restricted.
Before we bring in our next caller, DM, I just want to bring you in here, because some are saying maybe we should have a dual conversation to say men shouldn't be doing this, but at the same time, because men are doing this, women should also protect themselves.
You know, men's abuse of power remains one of the most insidious and normalized forms of GBV. You know, it is violence that is always too often unnamed, but does tremendous harm. It silences women. It also silences men who experience this and who are bystanders, by the way. But there's a maintenance of unequal power balance, and that we need to deal with. I agree with you. We need to have a conversation both with women, men, everybody in their diversity, where we confront the root cause of this violence, but also where we speak about dignity that everybody must enjoy and safety that must exist. This violence against women is not only limited to women, it's also extended to children. What do we mean if we can't protect children? And what is the blind spot now when there's high levels of violence against children as well, or against persons with disability or LGBTI persons?
Lisa, I also saw you there giving your expression when Moremedi said that it's based on power dynamics, but women also have a responsibility in ensuring that they keep themselves safe. What's your take on that view?
Look, women do have a responsibility to keep themselves safe, but How much responsibility is it a female's responsibility? We're already taking so many precautions. You walk in the street, you protect yourself. You get in your car, you lock your door. You don't open your windows. You sleep at night with your doors and windows locked. You don't go out after night. So are we saying that women shouldn't ever do anything? They shouldn't enjoy the same freedom and rights as everybody else? No, I don't agree with that at all. And I think men must learn that no is a complete sentence. And that's it. No is a complete sentence.
No.
And they must stop taking the power away from women. Women also have a voice, and they have just as much right to freedom of movement, speech, religion, everything that the Constitution gives us the freedom of. We should also have the freedom, and we don't have to lock ourselves behind a closed door at night because we're too scared to walk out onto the street.
Most certainly. We've got Mike in Port Alfred. Mike, a very good evening to you. What are your thoughts on today's topic?
Yes, I think my thought is that it's very, really... I think the law needs to be tightened, very strong. I think somehow it needs to be changed, because if it's still so weak the way I see it now at the moment, because somebody can just do that and thought that he will go away with that, or maybe at the end of the day, there will be a bail and something like that. I think the law must need to be very tight and very strong. And then another thing is that the men itself, I think they need to have a very strong conversation among us as men to make sure that really we advocate this very strongly, and shouldn't be just for one day, but should be, because it's a pandemic in our countries. So I think we need to deal with that every day, not for one day, but just continuous, which needs to be an awareness for the men. But also, I think the law, they need to...
All right, Mike, thank you so much for your thoughts on that. Advocate Mike is saying that we need to tighten and change the law.
Yes, we are quick to go to the law. And let me say, the South African law, particularly in gender-based violence and femicide, I believe that it is tight. I believe so. The problem is with the implementation. We are struggling to bridge the gulf between law and action. Should we succeed with that, I believe that we will see, a lot of improvement. But I would like just to say to the first man who was saying that, the one who was saying, making the remark about women, I would like him to know that he is accountable too, because we have amended, as I said, that even the Domestic Violence Act has also been amended. We have a mandatory reporting provision there that says that if you have knowledge or a reasonable suspicion or a reasonable belief that an act of domestic violence is being perpetrated against a child, a person with disabilities, and also the older person, you must take responsibility and report. I mean, it's an obligation, it's not a responsibility.
Right. It's
an obligation, and failure to do that amounts to a crime. And we have done the same with sexual offences. So in South Africa, everyone, as long as you are an adult person living in South Africa, whether you are a national or non-national, you have an obligation to report sexual violence and also domestic violence.
Most certainly. We do have another caller on the line, Mugete in Sebokeng. Good evening to you, and talk to us. So what's your thoughts on the justice system and GBV in South Africa?
Yes, good evening again. My name is Elias Mugete from Sebokeng. Forgive me for that. No. Yes, when it comes to the justice system, I do believe and have confidence in the justice system. The only issue is that we need to intensify the policies when it comes to gender-based violence and the vulnerable group, which is women and children. Because my opinion is that perpetrators do such acts knowing that they have a right to bail. And they know that when they get a bail, they will still come back and do such acts or live their lives knowing that they have maybe taken someone's life. So I do believe in the justice system is that we need to intensify our programs. We know that the department does have programs such as men's forums, like social development does have such a program. But now the question will be, who are their targets? Are they targeting people who are already informed about policies or gender-based violence? Or are they targeting people who do not know about gender-based violence and what are the consequences?
All right.
Because we need to educate people more about gender-based violence who are not informed instead of educating those who already know.
All right. Thank you so much for your call, Mogeti, this evening. Let's see what some of your responses are on WhatsApp. One from Rehau says, I think before the justice system, we must be safe because the world we live in is not safe. We must prevent, not cure. The system must be revised and revisited. The next one says, hi, this is Spiwe Ngenge from Engob in the Eastern Cape. My view is that government must apply the same approach as robbery, where they establish a special task force NIU and has proven its effectiveness since the establishment. In a nutshell, specific task teams must be established by the government to curb all forms of GBV and its elements. All right, we are left with less than a minute, so I'm going to ask for 30 seconds from each of our panelists just to give us their final thoughts. Onica, starting with you, just your final thoughts on tonight's discussion.
Certainly, there's two things that we have not done. One, we have not adequately funded the National Strategic Plan on GBV. It's 5 years since it was adopted. It needs to be funded fully in order for us to really address this issue. And lastly, we definitely need a constitutional amendment on Section 35, which is the rights of prisoners around this bail issue. The deadline for submitting is this Saturday to the constitutional review. And I think that every South African should take an opportunity to send that email by Saturday to make sure that we tighten up on bail issues and the constitutional rights issues of prisoners so we can create a safer South Africa for all of us.
Most certainly. Lisa, your parting shot?
I think we definitely need more specialized trained GBV and FCS units in every police station. Risk assessment tools must be put in place to prevent repeat offences. We definitely need faster forensic processing and no more DNA backlogs in our country. We need strong partnerships with NGOs and shelters. And the least of all, we need a society that refuses to be silent. A society that stands up and says enough is enough, and we are now going to protect our women and children of our country, and we're going to ensure that they are safe wherever they are.
Advocate Kambula?
Thank you. I agree with Onica that there is a need for Section 35, to be reviewed because we have a provision that exclusively protects the accused person, that is the arrested, the detained, and accused person. And the same Bill of Rights is mum on the rights of the victims of crime. So we need to correct that. And secondly, there is an overhaul, that is an entire review of the Criminal Procedure Act that is going on right now, which is also dealing with the chapter that deals with bail.
Right.
So there's that review that is going on. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, DM, I'm giving you only 10 seconds just to summarize for us, please.
That's okay. Look, I think for me, a whole of society is important. We need religious leaders. We need traditional leaders. We need civil society. We need our families to come out, speak out. Let's report gender-based violence, but let's prevent it. No more teenage pregnancies, that's statutory rape. No more murdering or raping of society. But we are here as government to serve and to respond, and that's where the investment is going to support every person in South Africa.
All right. Thank you so much to all our panelists for joining us this evening. I think the consensus really is this is a multi-pronged approach that needs all of us as society to ensure that we curb the scourge of gender-based violence. Thank you so much for joining us, and thanks to you for giving us your thoughts on this conversation. We'll be back with more news after this.